Hello, this is Lafayette Faust. Welcome to another episode of a Nevermore Hollows movie discussion. I'm continuing to write and narrate original stories about the creepy little town of Nevermore Hollows. That's never going to change. But as I had conversations with Chris and Tony about horror and how it affects us personally and the culture in general, I realized that it might be some fun content. I am extremely thankful for the support from everyone who has embraced this new content, and I hope that you like this review of the old and hokey movie called The Legend of Boggy Creek. Please hang out with us as we discuss and at times make fun of this movie. With that, I invite you to sit back, turn on a light, and prepare yourself. So, excellent. So, there's been some good stories in here, and if y'all both are okay with it, I'm going to cut it up into smaller content and put it out there. So, what we're here for today is we wanted to discuss. This is one of our episodes where we're starting to do some movie reviews. Mm-hmm. And we're not really, the goal is not to necessarily review the movie, just what did that movie, what was it trying to accomplish, and what has it done for the culture in general, and specifically horror or cryptids, because you and I are deeply into the cryptids kind of stuff. So you had brought to us Boggy Creek, the Legend of Boggy Creek. So with that, I'm going to let you tell us, why did you bring this to us, and what do you want to get out of it?
Well, this movie terrified me when I was 9-10 years old, first time I saw it. Yeah. It is a hokey movie. Yeah. It was originally supposed to be a documentary. Okay, and I kind of got that.
So, Tony and I were talking just briefly before you got here. We were like, if you told me it was supposed to be a documentary that kind of evolved into something else, I forgot it, because I was like, is this a movie? Is it a documentary? What is it? So go ahead.
Well, halfway through it, they decided to switch gears.
Okay.
And fortunately, they got a lot of the people who were in the movie were actually playing themselves or playing close relatives.
Right.
But there's something about this movie that you can to this day, you can sit here and watch it. And I've watched it. Lord knows. I found a DVD copy in the $5 bin at Walmart, to Tammy's chagrin. That's why I'm like, you shouldn't let me come in here. Yeah. She hates it. But the music is horrible.
Yeah, what was the song that you said?
Hey, Travis Crabtree.
Hey, Travis Crabtree.
I keep thinking Terry Crabtree. Yeah, hey, Travis Crabtree, living out in the woods, living like you should. I thought that was
and but you got it. It's what, 72, 73. Yeah. But and the director actually did voices, and he was in when they were in the bean field, and that he was there. Yeah. He actually starred in Back to Boggy Creek, the sequel from the 80s, and it is bad. Yeah. But and All About Alabama Arkansas, excuse me.
Right.
Sorry about that, Arkansas. I didn't mean to get that wrong. But at Falk, Arkansas, it's a tiny little town. It's like driving through Benton. If you close your eyes, you're going to miss it.
Yeah.
And according to many, this critter's been seen for a long time. Not just the 60s. We're talking from what they've found, 1800s.
Yeah.
But
so with that, let me ask you this question: do you think that it's the same cryptid, or do you think it's offspring?
I think it's offspring, but it has a genetic deformity where it only has 3 toes.
I noticed that when the little boy at the creek says it's only got 3 toes, that goes against most Bigfoot lore.
And if you're thinking of something that's possibly at least 6 feet tall, and about 400 pounds or more, how does it balance on 3 toes?
Right.
But that's another thing in cryptid and Bigfoot lore, is that sometimes you get these, maybe they're inbred.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a different species. Maybe it's this or that, but you get 3 toes. The Honey Island Swamp Monster only had 3 toes.
Okay.
You know, and this thing, the tagline in the movie is "It always travels the creeks."
Right.
You know, and the first time I showed it to my daughter, because my daughter is all about monsters and all this stuff, she's like, "This is stupid." I was like, "But think about it. These people don't have a phone.
Yeah.
They don't have running water.
Right. Yeah, I noticed they were living in shacks, man.
Yeah. You know, this is Arkansas in the backwoods.
Yeah.
And they even said their closest neighbor is like a mile and a half away. Yeah. What are you going to do? If this thing comes up to your house, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
You're going to shoot it.
Right.
And there's many, many times that they shot it, but the crab trees and all that, a lot of them played either themselves, or I think at one point it was the uncles or nephews playing the uncles. But the guy made the statement. He was out squirrel hunting or something, but he was using birdshot.
Yeah.
And he said, I switched over from my bird to my buck. And he said, but when I drew down on him, he looked like a man, and I couldn't. He said, I never lived myself.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I saw. Yeah, that was an interesting point there. You know, to why would you not shoot it? You know, in the heat of that moment. Now, you know, one of the things, you know, you and I love cryptids. I got away from it for a long time, and when you came back into my world, you've drawn me back into that, which I love. And Tony, I don't know how deep you are into the cryptid universe, but Tony or Chris here is pretty much an encyclopedia.
I swim in it.
I'm not. I know just very, very little. Is that like skinwalker stuff?
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
Bigfoot, Nessie, all that. Those are cryptids, right?
Yeah.
So
well, this is a gateway movie. This was my gateway movie. Because when I saw this, and I'm like, I started I got to read.
Yeah.
I got to, you know, I read all kinds of Bigfoot stuff. I did this, I did that. And it's a gateway movie for a lot of guys.
Yeah.
A lot of these big cryptozoologists, this is what they cite is getting them interested.
Well, when we were being interviewed with Justin and Jay on Cryptids of the Corn, you brought it up, and they both latched on. They were like, yeah, we know that. Yeah, that movie.
And what the critter was a ghillie suit.
Yeah, you could tell at first.
With a bunch of Halloween wigs attached to it.
Yeah. The first time I saw it, I went, that's a ghillie suit. And then later I was like, well, it's no longer a ghillie suit. It's like they evolved it as they were shooting.
But it has everything that you need for a horror movie. It's a little tiny town in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And this is before major technology. So if something had happened, nobody's going to know about it.
That's right. If you disappeared, you just disappeared.
You know, everybody met around. You know, I love that scene where they're all sitting around the potbelly stove.
Yeah.
Talking. That's how they talk. That's how information.
Simpler
got around.
times, yeah.
Oh yeah.
But you know, here's what gets me. When it starts out, you know, I was thinking just the way it was shot. Of course, you know, it was on the film of the day, which we talked about with Black Christmas. That we kind of like that.
Oh
you know?
yeah, I love how the colors look and everything.
Yeah,
it's very
absolutely.
subdued, but it's awesome.
Yeah, because it sets a certain tone that we miss today with this HD stuff.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, you see this poor kid, and he's running his tail off. He's running his tail off, and he finally makes it to the general store, and those old dudes are like, dude, you're whack. Your mama's whack. Your grandmama's whack. Go back.
Tell your mom I'll be down there tomorrow.
Right.
You know.
Even saving old ladies from monsters was at a slower pace.
Then you send an 8-year-old back out into the woods with this thing. You know.
Right.
You can outrun it, boy. You're all right. You know. Or the one where that kid shot it.
Yeah.
And you know. And again, I had to look up that you know they're hunting deer with dogs.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I found that interesting too. So when this movie started out, it had a whole Texas chainsaw vibe for me, just with the way they were shooting it, the way they were, you know, just the vibe of it and the colors and everything. But what I got most out of this movie, okay, was that it's literally a snapshot of what life was like in that small Arkansas town at that time. Whether it was scary or not for me, which I didn't find it scary, but I did find that, wow. I mean, I could see why there were certain scenes, like when it was reaching in at them there at the end and all this, and it was beating up on the dude. But just for me, we're old enough to remember those days.
Yeah.
We are. You know, my grandparents on my dad's side, they lived in a shack with no electricity. And they, you know, there was an outhouse. That's how they lived. And, you know, like you say, when they finally got a phone, it was a party line.
Yeah, and you had to wait.
That's right. So, you know, it was very nostalgic for me.
Oh, yeah.
You know, because I was that kid at 11 years old running around in the woods with a shotgun.
Yeah. You know, playing outside.
Yeah.
That's what you did.
Yeah.
You know, but
and how times have changed when you're talking about that little kid. He was 13 years old, they said.
Yeah.
And he hears something. He runs in, grabs his shotgun. He's off in the woods by himself.
He's got a deer.
Nowadays, we're so terrified of guns that we don't teach kids that it's, you know, it's
and
it's
he
okay.
shot it.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And hit it.
Yep.
That's got to be something, you know, for a 13-year-old that's just got the snot scared out of him that he took beat on it and shot it.
But, you know, we raised kids differently back then. You know, you didn't have the gun violence that you have today because we don't teach kids. Yeah, right. One, we don't raise kids like we used to. And two, when we don't teach how to handle guns.
Well, they knew that if you shot something, it died.
Yeah.
It didn't get
There
an
were
extra
consequences.
life.
Consequences.
You know, that was just part of life. But, you know, we were just talking about Travis Crabtree in that song.
Yeah,
but you know, think about it.
So Tony sent me that. He sent me the song.
It's on YouTube. The whole thing. It's like a music video thing about it. It's about Travis Crabtree.
Tony sent it to me, and I listened to it. And I was like, I hadn't watched the movie at that point. I'm like, what the hell is Tony sending this to me? And then when I got to the point in the movie, and when I got to the point in the movie, I was laughing last night. I went, "That's why Tony sent this to me."
This guy's in a canoe. That's a stick. That wasn't a canoe,
right? Yeah.
You know, and he's this 16 years old.
Yeah.
They said before school he went out and got his trap lines
for hours. He walked miles and spent so many hours putting out the trap before school. I noticed that too.
And, you know, and these guys, these parents would let their teenage boys or younger go off for a week out in the woods.
That's what.
Hope they come back.
Yeah.
You know, and they were, you know, cooking for themselves and drinking coffee or whatever else they get a hold of.
So, Chris, you said it terrified you.
It did. When
I was reading reviews from people like us and stuff that don't different kind of websites, and they said it terrified them. And they said that the part that most of them said was the scariest was the girls in the trailer. You remember the girls in the trailer? 3 or 4 girls in that trailer. Mm-hmm. They said that right there, they wouldn't go into a dark room after they seen that. And it's funny because I watched this. Did I think it was scary? I thought it was interesting, but I'm not really scary. But I mean, you know, it's dated so much. And back in those days, I think it was made in 72.
Yeah.
There was no CGI or nothing.
No,
right. It was all plain Jane and simple. And yeah, it terrified. People took movies back in those days to the heart.
Yeah.
Not just horror. I can remember growing up when, totally again, it's not horror, the Walking Tall movies. I've got uncles that thought Walking Tall, Smokey the Bandit, and Every Which Way But Loose was religious.
Yes.
They took it to the heart and it was religious. And I can remember going to the theater. There was 3 of those Walking Talls, and this is not the rock stuff.
Yeah.
There was 3 of them. The last one I think was called The Final Chapter, and it's when the main character, Buford Pusser from Tennessee, was killed.
Right.
Yeah. And I can remember going to the theater and seeing that movie. I could just barely remember it, and coming out of that theater, and a few people crying.
Yeah.
And I told my uncle, I didn't know, and I looked at him, I said, what's going on? Why are they crying? He said, son, they killed Buford. Go get with your mom over, okay? They killed Buford. You know, it was really serious.
Yeah. Well, I think part of it, too, because I was thinking about this last night, too, because I was thinking, why would this movie scare so many people? Right? Well, look at what we're used to now. We're so spoon-fed with everything that we're not able to let ourselves be in that moment. So and there's so much CGI, but if you're saying, you know, trying to think what in 1972 you didn't have the special effects you had today. So you're sitting there, but 2, you know, we weren't that far removed. Had I watched this in the 70s, I could see I lived in a shack like that with my grandparents, right? And it was out in the middle of nowhere. So when you're able to put yourself into that situation,
right?
But we're so far removed from that kind of stuff now that we can't allow ourselves to be in that moment in that movie.
I remember, like I said, watching it when I was 9 or 10, and it got dark, and I forgot to take the trash out, and I had to take the trash out. That's the fastest. That was the fastest I ever took the trash out in my life, because I had to go out to the shed.
Yeah.
Buddy, I was moving.
Yeah.
But I'll give you another one. So my daughter, while she was still in college at Middle Tennessee State University, she's in the band and she's a percussionist. So all these drumline guys, she borrowed my copy and she wanted them to show them this movie. And they panned this thing like you would not believe.
Right.
This is stupid. This is dumb. But when it was time to go home and it was dark outside,
Yeah.
one of them, to my daughter, who's not, she's 5'1",
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah. She's
five,
short girl. Yeah.
Well, she was, would you step out on the balcony and
Right.
And just make sure we all get to the car.
And that kind of gives me hope, because that's literally what we're talking about. You know, are you able to put yourself in that moment and go, what would it have been like? You know, we're not able to do it. We're so distracted nowadays that we can't allow ourselves to be scared. Like for me, the creepiest part for me wasn't the three girls in the trailer, although I found it interesting that even three teenage girls living in a trailer had a rifle.
Yeah, had a high-powered rifle that they were loading up.
Had a refrigerator full of cold soap.
That's right.
She told her, she said, Mary Beth, get me a soap pop out of the icebox right before everything happened.
That's right. So, but what got me was the point when Mary Beth, there at the first one, when she's sitting in there, because again, little shack, I lived in a shack like that, and you know, you're sitting there and she's reading. There's no TV. She's reading, right? And outside, they're just surrounded by dark woods, and she hears something. So at that moment, I was like, all right, let me put myself, because I can touch with that.
Yep.
There's a touch point. And for me, that was creepy. Going, because at that point I remembered being in my granddaddy's house, and then we would hear stuff outside, and he would he'd step out, not that he thought it was anything like a Bigfoot or something.
Right, there's somebody on your property.
Might have been somebody on the property, but he used to, he was a believer in the paranormal. He was an old Appalachian guy, and he go, might be a haint.
Well, the rules of living in Appalachia. If you hear your name called from the woods, go in the house.
That's right.
If you hear a whistle in the woods, don't whistle back. And when you go in at night, draw the blinds, because if you can see out, they can see in.
Right.
Yeah. But it's and then after that, what you're talking about, they found the kitten outside, scared to death.
Yeah. Now I have to admit, as I was allowing myself to get pulled into that part, and I was like, okay, I'm there.
Yeah.
I can remember. I'm old. I'm old enough to have been in that situation. But when they showed that poor cat, I got tickled for some reason. I was just like,
it's
the cat.
Like I said, it's the hokiness. This isn't a B movie. This is like a D movie.
Right, but did they really kill a cat? Because that looked like a real cat.
It's possible.
But
maybe Cannibal Holocaust had all kind of animal mutilations and stuff in it.
Yeah.
What did?
Cannibal Holocaust.
Really?
And they really killed. But it was like a turtle. I mean, I'm trying to justify it, but
right.
A lot of those actors and stuff that were in it said if they know they were going to do that, they would have been in it. Of course, that's
that was the rules were different.
Yeah,
it was it was bad, but the rules were different.
Yeah.
I was trying to think when I because after I watched it, I know that I'd seen it or I had seen a movie similar to it, but after I watched it, I could remember it come on around the time. See, there was two things in our generation that for me that changed what we could see. And all the different type of varieties we could see, because we're the 3, 9, 12 guys. That's what we had on TV.
Yes,
yeah.
Well, three channels, which for us, for those of you who don't, because it might have been different channels wherever you're listening. We had, back in the day, there was no cable. You literally had 3 channels on the TV, and ours was channel 3, channel 9, and channel 12.
And then they all went off at like midnight.
Yeah, and then they would give you that thing. Yeah, it's 11 o'clock. Do you know where your children are?
Yeah.
But the two things that really changed it for me was cable TV and VCRs.
Yeah.
Going into a movie store, I can remember, man, watching. We got cable TV. I think it was HBO. I think it was HBO. There was stuff on there. They showed naked people.
Yeah.
My God, what we come across? Look, we're. Gentlemen, we come across the great divide. He's got HBO, but we know that if they're 8 o'clock and they're only going to show us movies at night,
your status went up
as
the neighborhood.
We were watching some of these weird type stuff. I can remember I watched hardcore.
Yeah,
George C. Scott's hardcore. I had no business watching that movie at all.
Right.
And I wouldn't watch it until somebody naked come on there, and then I'd look at it. I was a kid, but it opened up a plethora to everything like there was stuff like, just not horror, but like the music, man. That music, Mary Poppins.
Yeah.
Stuff I'd never seen before, you know. And I was The Wiz, the old TV show.
Oh, yeah,
The
I
Wiz.
remember that. Yeah.
Suddenly, and going into movie stores. Oh my God! You ever seen the movie Maniac? Joe Spinell.
Yeah.
First time I'd ever seen that was on VCR.
You know,
Right.
And you didn't see that type of violence.
Walking into a video store and just looking at the boxes.
Oh my God, man!
You know, it's like Disney World. You're so
Well, see, and like we all grew up at the time, these towns that we lived in were smaller, so it's like we didn't have access to these movies until.
Because see, I remember like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I don't ever remember playing on theater.
No,
No.
until the VCR age came out, and then you got, I didn't know this was a movie,
Exactly.
or it would be a movie that you only read in a magazine.
Yeah, if you couldn't buy a VCR, you could rent one.
That's right.
You remember Faces of Death?
Yeah.
The original
Oh,
black and white
gosh.
box. I remember getting. You know, a lot of it's they say it's fake now, and it's news footage and stuff.
Yeah.
I can remember renting that movie. You had to be 18 to rent it.
Yeah.
The guy at the movie store knowed my mom and dad.
Yeah.
And he said, I can't let you rent that. So we went over to Kmart, which was beside the movie store, and got one of them, brought them back, and they signed the paper and we rented it. We thought we crossed the rite of passage.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
You know, we felt like we were over into another realm where people don't look at me. I've seen things you can't. You know, these eyes have seen things that a normal man can't go through.
I've seen some
But
stuff.
it opened up so much, man. Yeah, I've seen some stuff. I've seen the dark and the black.
Yeah.
But it's now to me we're spoiled.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I told Alan, my church youth group would go see slasher movies together.
Yeah.
And we would sit there and just hee-haw.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, because you could see the humor. And the humor was there. You know, and this one, Maddie loves that the scene where the guys, I don't know what y'all gotta do, but I gotta go to the bathroom.
Right.
You know, and I'm like, what the crap?
Right, that was pretty funny. And then, isn't he the one that gets beat up?
Oh, yeah. You know, and of course, now, that one, if you slow it down, you can actually see the guys wearing a gorilla mask.
Yeah.
Because you can see the eye holes. But, you know, I've seen interviews that they don't talk about him on the movie. They talk about the constable. But there was a deputy
Yeah.
that was there with the constable. And I've seen interviews with him, and he's like, oh, yeah. He said there was footprints all over that place. He said there was stuff, and he said that boy's messed up.
Yeah.
He was the one that escorted them to Texarkana, you know, because he was in in bad shape. But you know, then they left.
Yeah.
They packed their stuff up. You know,
It's funny you said Texarkana. The guy that directed this movie, Charles Pierce. You know, just a couple years after that, he made another movie about the Phantom Killer. That was, I think this was dated back. The movie was made in '76, but I think the actual incident happened in the '40s, right around the Second Civil War. I mean, Second Civil War.
Second Civil War.
War.
We know what's on Tony's mind.
right around World War II, at the end of World War II. And it's called The Town That Dreaded Sundown.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
He made that movie. He made another movie called The Evictors, which I thought was real good.
Yeah.
But I remember The Town That Dreaded Sundown. I can remember my brother talking about him and our cousins went to the drive-in.
Yeah.
And saw that. And he said, as we were leaving, he said, of course, it's early in the morning and late. He said, we pulled out of that drive-in. He said, we get just a handful of yards down past the drive-in. And there was a guy walking down the side of the road dressed up like that.
Oh.
He said, I said, what'd y'all think? He said, we like to have a car wreck.
Right.
Because, you know, in the movie, the guys, they never found out who done it. The Phantom Killer, it's a big unsolved mystery.
Yeah.
But, man, it was things like that. Knowing everything about everything sometimes ain't a good
That's
thing.
right. Well, you know, and that's the thing that my son is a comic book artist too, like Chris is, and we talk a lot about story. And you know, Chris, you and I have been talking a lot about story because now that you're part of Nevermore Hollows. So one of the things that Ethan and I hate about a story is when they tell you everything. You got to have some mystery.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
Life without mystery is not good at all.
That's
You've got to
right.
have a little
you
bit
got
of
to let
mystery.
the imagination. You can scare yourself more than the film
Yeah.
or a book can do
Yeah.
if it gets into your head.
Exactly.
And see, that's one of the things. My imagination,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
if anybody ever decides to look into my skull, it's going to freak them out.
Right.
But at 10 years old,
Yeah.
that thing was in my backyard.
Yeah.
Because I lived in a rural type area, and we had several acres, and there's woods and animals and all this stuff. So I went out. It was dark.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and where I live now, it's a little more built up. But when Maddie was younger, it was the same way.
Yeah.
You know, and it was dark outside, and
Right.
there's, you know, you can't tell what's out there.
Well, see, and that's part of it too, where I'm thinking that a lot of people today wouldn't be able to see this movie. Yes, it is hokey, but they wouldn't be able to have those touch moments like what we did. Obviously,
they don't understand.
Right. Obviously, when you saw it, you were closer to this movie at the moment. You were seeing it while you were living it. Tony and I are looking at it going, well, we're 40 years removed from that, but if we allow ourselves to go, what was it like when we were 10 years old?
Exactly.
So now we're there. And but the fact that they don't explain everything too, to kind of get back to my point on that.
Right.
When Ethan and I were talking about story, as a storyteller, you want to oversell it sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm always running it by Ethan, going, did I over-explain this? Does it need that? And he'll do the same thing with his stories with me. And now I've been obviously letting you read some of the stuff before we publish it too, so you can speak into it. So, but in this, there's a lot of, to get to that point, there's a lot of unanswered things. And I wrote here on my notes, there's still a bit of mystery left on that. So you think, what was it? Was it a Bigfoot? Why did it have 3 toes? Was it inbred? But the fact that it's not answered and people are still seeing this thing on occasion, that's the mystery that we love.
And I love the part that they kind of give him a human quality as he's lonely.
Yeah.
And he goes away for like 8 years and he comes back.
Yeah.
And it's like
a moth to a flame, he's drawn to civilization.
And you're going, why would this thing want to be social with us? But that's another part of the Bigfoot lore, is that these things, they're curious.
Yeah.
Just like we're curious about them, they're curious about us. But they understand that we're destructive.
Yeah.
They could snap us like a twig.
Right.
But there's more of us, and we can shoot from a distance.
Right.
And I've heard a lot of stories where these guys will see these things and they know they've got guns.
Yeah.
And one guy today.
I was just listening to Cryptids the other day, and they were telling a story about, they were literally talking about that. Well, they keep their distance because of the fact that we have superior
They know
firepower.
what a gun is.
Yeah, I've heard a guy one time, I following him there, and he was talking about how he says he's got them on his property. And he said, I can't set up night vision cameras. He said, because they're aware of what that is.
Yeah.
He said, they'll go to the point where, he said, I can set something up like some food or something. And he said, it'll go black. And then when it comes back, all of it's gone and stuff. And he said, well, he figured it as he was walking in front of that camera, blocking the view, one of us, and keeping people from seeing what.
Well, I think
possibly
a lot of people do, but I think they can see it in our. I think they
That's
can
what
see
he
it.
said.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to think of. That's what he said. He said, he said, he went as far as to say he's fed on Pop-Tarts and stuff like that. And he said they had untied bags and tied them back up.
Yeah.
There's a guy up in, it's almost on the Canadian border, like Wisconsin, Minnesota. He takes jars of peanut butter, and he doesn't open them. He just sets them out. And when he gets back, they're completely empty. And he said like they've been put through a dishwasher, but the lid's still on them.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And you know how they got
peanut
that,
butter.
supposedly got the hair from them? They put peanut butter up on a tree and tape, and they would lean up to the tree. When they back down, they would pull hair off. And they
clever.
think that may have been how they
I heard
that's how
this
they
the
got
other
hair.
day.
Clever.
This lady said that there was one on her property, and it was, she always felt like she was being watched. Her husband was a truck driver, and he was always away. And she was out walking her dogs on the property to a little pond or something, and said she just felt like somebody was behind her. So she turned around, and this thing was standing there. And she said in her head, because she started freaking out, in her head she heard, "It's okay, I'm the one that's been watching you."
Yeah, I've heard recently that there's psychic or psionic.
Yeah. She described him as looking like a human.
Yeah.
But bigger and darker, but with no flat nose. Said looked more like a very large Native American, just covered in hair.
Yeah.
But then she said when he stepped into the woods, he kind of digitized. But I think, because I heard a guy tell a story about this, because they say if you shine a flashlight on them, it's like their fur absorbs the light.
Yeah, you were telling me about that. That's interesting.
I think that they can control the hair, that's that predator thing.
You're right.
Is that they can, and it'll reflect.
Yeah.
But
it's not Bigfoot. But have you seen the thing? It's happened. It's a little over a year ago. It's probably been a year and a couple of months now. The Las Vegas alien thing.
Yeah,
Where it crashed in those people's backyard.
Yep.
Yeah. And I've seen a thing where these people have analyzed these videos and done all these tests on them, and they can see them. And they circled them and point them out and said, yeah. And I mean, man, those guys, every one of them had guns when they went back, and they left. They got out of there like their heads were on fire.
And when you hear...
They saw something.
Yeah, when you hear that initial 911 call, and then you hear them talk afterwards, that seemed real.
Yeah. Well, that first officer was there. He meant business.
He even said there's something here.
Yeah.
So we're coming up on 30 minutes, and I would like to try to keep these around that.
Sure.
So Tony and I have already had a conversation about we would love to have this conversation about the Las Vegas aliens.
Oh yeah.
And then what happened down in Miami also a few months ago. So those will be separate episodes. But to wrap this one up, if I can understand why you brought this to us, is one, I know you believe that Bigfoot is real.
Oh yeah.
And so this movie is a touchstone for you because you were young, you were real close to it, it scared you, it maybe even was the start of your walk down this cryptid path. So I get it, So I want to ask Tony a question. Okay, so not this movie specifically, but in general, when it comes to cryptids, do you think that cryptids are a real thing?
I believe it's a high possibility now. Years ago, I didn't. Mm-hmm. But the UFO thing really has my attention, which is different from the cryptids. But yeah, I mean, people are seeing things, man. Yeah. And you can't deny anymore. You can't, this is swamp gas and all that stuff. You got to come to the realization. The cryptid thing, I know what they are. They're seeing things.
Yeah.
I mean, plain and simple.
Not everybody's
what purpose
lying.
Does people like you and like us guys, like that Las Vegas alien thing, why would they lie?
Right.
Why would you lie about that? And you don't want that. And then you see as it goes on, they don't get the attention. They're
right.
They're not on talk shows. They're not doing.
Well, it's because there's suppression. They don't want that out. But look, Chris now, and you've known me for 30 years. Okay, the things that I've seen. I mean, you know me. I'm not going to make that up.
No.
You know Chris now. Chris is not going to make that up. Mm-mm. So let me ask you this more pointed question. So now you're open to the idea of cryptids. Is Bigfoot real?
Golly bum, I'd have to say yeah, man. There's just too much stuff, and I don't know. Yeah, I mean, what it is, where it's from. Yeah. Is it? I've heard there's groups of them. Mm-hmm. They take care of one another. That's why you never see a dead one, because they take care of one another. Yeah. And the guy that I was telling you about, I'll see if I can find some of his stuff. He says he believes that they were having an issue one night. He said he woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning just screaming.
Yeah.
And he said, I stepped out there on my front porch, and he said, I listened to him. He said, I think one of them had died.
Yeah.
He said, because you could hear sorrow. Yeah. When these things, he said, it wasn't like I've heard in the past. He said, there was an issue. Something was going on.
Listen to the Sierra sounds.
I have. That's where the guys go up.
The samurai chatter. Dude. They're talking. Yeah. And they're fighting over food.
Alan, you got to hear that.
Okay. And these guys start talking to them like they'll just mimic them. And it's making them mad.
Yes.
Because you don't know what you're saying.
They were afraid they were crossing the line. They didn't know what they were saying.
Yeah, you're thinking, I'm going to say the same thing, but you don't realize they're cussing each other, so now you're cussing them.
The thing is, around here, they're called wood boogers.
Yeah.
And like there's the southern ones are usually red like orangutans, mm-hmm. and they don't have a good temperament. They're not Harry and the Hendersons. They'll take your dog and eat it. They'll do whatever. But they're about 6-7 feet. Then the ones like the Honey Island Swamp Monster and stuff. Here's the thing: great apes have no body fat. Great apes cannot swim. Mm-hmm. These things can swim.
Right. So
they're not great apes. But then they're seeing different variations. The Alabama white thing is supposed to be one that's solid it's an albino. They've seen white ones. The Midwest, they've seen them that were blonde or salt and pepper or whatever. And then when you get up into the Great Northwest, you get into these big guys. And this one guy says that the alpha males up there are 12 feet tall.
Yeah, and you would think that they would be smaller in colder climates. You would think, but we don't know the biology.
But think about that.
Yeah.
12 feet tall.
That's
You're
massive.
looking at something that is well over 1,000 pounds.
Yeah.
That's going to be about 5 to 6 feet wide at the shoulder. And you're going to tell him he doesn't exist?
Right.
I'm going to say, sir. And,
Right. So, yeah, I agree. I was on the fence for many, many years about Bigfoot specifically, but I think, now there's we don't know everything.
No, we don't.
We don't.
We really don't.
Even though we say that we're pretty confident that we've discovered all that needs to be discovered, then you pick it, like literally this week I've read numerous articles on Apple news where a new species has been discovered. Oh, we thought this was extinct and now it's not. So of course there can be something of intelligence out there that is, beyond our reach and only showing itself at times.
Look at what certain people that are referred to now as non-elected officials, these big government guys in the military and stuff, have come out saying. They're saying, I mean, they call it disclosure.
Yeah.
The guy the Nell guy,
Yeah,
the Carl Nell. Look at what he's saying. This guy was a colonel in the Air Force, and he said, we've been in contact with him for years.
there's a guy that said, former military, that on the base, this is one of the big military bases out west. That's how they train their guys on new night vision. Is they take them out at night and say, spot the Bigfoot.
Interesting.
And because they live on base.
Interesting. So now I am definitely a believer that Bigfoot is a strong possibility. So it's interesting to hear that Tony does, because over the years, Tony and I have had a lot of conversations, and I was always curious where you landed, because you were always a little bit ambiguous. But so what we've determined in this episode is the three of us believe that Bigfoot is real. Mm-hmm. We see Boggy Creek as a snapshot of a time in America's history to where it was a simpler time, but we can see why something like this would be absolutely terrifying in that time, that moment, right?
Yeah.
And I'll end it on this. One of the things that cracked me up too, we're all Southern boys, right? But some places are more Southern than others. When they take that poor guy into Texarkana, and those two nurses are standing over him, and the doctor comes in. One of the things too, I noticed that everybody was smoking, even the doctor, because they're all
in the
smoking,
room, they come out
they're all
smoking,
smoking, right? So
Because smoking was good for you.
that's right. So the doctor shows up, and that one little nurse, bless her heart, she goes, "I believe we need to give him an IV, doctor." I was thinking, man, even I needed to slow that down and listen to what she was saying. She was so Southern. But I feel this has been a great episode. Chris, thank you for bringing this movie to us.
I enjoyed it.
Thanks for watching it, because again, it is one of my absolute favorites, and it's just Tammy, because in my studio I will kick it in there once in a while, and she's like, "Will you turn that down?" Because she's seen it so many times.
Right. So we for those of you who've listened to this episode this far, we thank you for staying around and listening. We ask that you like, subscribe, share, comment, give us 5 stars. There will be more content coming out of this nature where we're just discussing things. So with that, this is Alan, Tony, and Chris, and we'll see you the next time.
See y'all.
See ya.
Mm-hmm.